Jacobs will be joining us. We're just going to ask him to come up because we're all informing him, okay? Sounds good. All right, hey y'all, what's up?
What's up? What's up?
How's it going?
Good, good.
So, first of all, thank you for coming out. Hey, you guys, please. It's not easy to be up here, just being straight up with you. It's not easy. So, if you can kind of tone it down, that'd be great. If you have to talk, we want you to talk. Just go out the doors and keep the conversation going, okay? Sounds good? All right. So this panel is about like what's next, right? Like NFTs and DAOs for social good, right? Because that's why we're here, right? It's not just about making money, right? Even though we're not against that part. We need resources in order to make change in this country, right? Change laws and so forth. But this is about addressing social issues. And so I would love for you to just briefly just introduce yourself, 3 minutes, no more, just kind of who you are, what your project is, and just a response to what you're doing around the social good project. Start with you, John.
Absolutely. First off, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. We're happy to be supporting this event as one of the main sponsors. Obviously, there's a lot of good that's being done coming out of this event, so again, happy to support in that way. But my name is John. I'm the co-founder of Soma Finance. Soma Finance is a U.S. compliant decentralized exchange issuance platform and DeFi protocol. So what that means is essentially we're creating DeFi products, DeFi meaning decentralized finance, products that are compliant with US KYC, know your customer, AML, anti-money laundering, and securities laws. So we essentially are a joint venture between a company that I also co-founded, as well as with Will. Give Will a shout out in the front row. Called MantraDAO, and a US broker-dealer based in New York called Tri-Joint Capital. So basically you have the tech side from the MantraDAO platform, and you have the compliance side from the US broker-dealer. And essentially what we're trying to do is create, again, an environment where you can compliantly issue, trade, sell, invest in different types of NFTs, tokens, and assets without having to worry about if you're going to get slapped by the SEC or FINRA or some other regulatory organization. So essentially what we're trying to do with Reform and with ASJ is that within their Web3 strategy, whether it's through them directly or through any of their partners or their connections, that whenever they do have a token issuance or they want to have a compliant venue for trading these types of assets, we can do it properly and by the book so that they can rest their head easy at night and not have to worry about getting pinched by the SEC. So that's Soma Finance, and I guess I already kind of covered how we're trying to help out with reform and social justice and social good.
Thank you, Scott.
Sweet. So some of you have already heard this like 1,000 times, but I'll say this thing again. I'm Scott. I'm one of the co-founders of LiquidStar and Scry. So LiquidStar, what we're doing is we design these solar-powered shipping containers that provide electricity and water in emerging markets. People from those communities, they come to the charging station, they rent batteries and buy water from us. And then when there's excess electricity, we mine Bitcoin and Ethereum. We give a percentage of that back to the locals as a form of UBI. So our first pilot project, and I actually got the call yesterday at 1 a.m. It's like approved. Everything's going to start in the next month or so. It's going to be in Djibouti. And then we're working in Kenya with UNICEF, Giga, and the Ethereum Foundation. And then we'll also have projects lined up in Benin, Nigeria, Lebanon, and Indonesia. A lot of traveling. Yeah, and then on the Scry side, so I started an NFT startup, actually, when I met John and Will in Hong Kong, and basically our goal there is to connect the metaverse to the universe, but we want to do it in an inclusive way, right? So oftentimes in emerging tech, especially over the last 4 years, I can honestly say I have never been in a room talking about NFTs as this diverse, right? So I was often, especially in Hong Kong, I was often one of the only black people in the room. So my goal coming back to the US and having gone to a bunch of these events is really just making sure that nobody gets left behind in this new technology that can kind of really change how things work.
Hello everyone, my name is X, yes, just a letter. I am a formerly incarcerated person myself. When I was 16, I was facing 27 years in jail. Obviously, here now, so there you go. I ended up at Microsoft. I was their first blockchain ambassador, so from 2017 to 2019, I was bringing blockchain to some of the world's biggest companies, from Bank of America to Singapore Airlines to Nestle to Xbox. And after a while, I got a little tired of it because y'all hadn't caught on to crypto yet. So I switched over to Google, where I have been working extensively at the intersection of artificial intelligence and diversity and inclusion. So how many of y'all saw that in a Pixel commercial, where like the camera can see darker skin tones? Well, that was my team's research that ended up empowering that, right? So my project, which is actually a life mission, is making sure that people who are like me, who grew up in communities where, you know, going to college was like not on the radar, it's like as long as you graduate with a 2.0, you Gucci, right? Are able to access this next wave of technology. I saw what happened when AI really hit the market and people didn't know linear algebra, they didn't know weights and loss functions, and they couldn't access the power of that technology to transform their communities. So what I'm really passionate about is twofold, and what I work on is one, accessible tech education. A lot of my homies, you know, we'll go kick it with them and be in the, you know, rolling up a backwood in the garage, playing Call of Duty, whooping my ass. And I want to make sure that they know how to access the metaverse that you're bringing into the universe. The flip side of that is I also help people who have ideas but don't understand the technology figure out how to apply these things together. What is that intersection? So if you have a social good cause, you're working on something, I really work at that intersection to help you figure out what is the product, how can the technology empower what you're doing and take it to the next level so that there will be less people behind bars and more people in the metaverse.
Yes.
My name's Jeff Hood. I run a company in LA called Metacurio, but I've been in this space since 2012. I started investing in Bitcoin very early and then Ethereum, and was involved in the ICO space. Actually launched a platform for tracking nonprofit donations through the blockchain, which failed miserably. And actually that was the best thing that ever happened to me, because we were way too early, and I didn't want to give up on the ability to change the way people, instead of focusing on generational wealth, started focusing on generational impact. So that kept me down that journey. Most people know me from the NFT drops that my company creates and curates for celebrities like Mike Tyson, Dennis Rodman. I kind of consider myself a celebrity educator, because we're trying to educate celebrities on how to enter Web3 and give something back and not just take it, right? So very focused on everything that we do in moving the community forward, right? So that's just a little bit of it.
I think being early is the theme of this panel. My name is Elisa Jacobs. I founded an agency called Loop that we call a change agency, and the purpose is really helping major companies be stewards in the space and integrate and immerse in culture and community meaningfully and as the plus one to the party, not stomping down the street. I also launched the first women's diverse gaming collective, Queens, and am now Chief Strategy Officer of Galaxy Racer North America, which is not only bringing the world's leading esports organization to the US, but also really championing the space for Black and brown creators, women and gender equity, really putting money and resources and education, literacy, access, community building in incubation style to really help support and uplift. It's not just about handing a check, there's no handouts, it's access to entry. And so most of my life, most of my work, all of my work, for the last 15 years has also really been rooted in not just DEI for diversity's sake, but really helping educate corporations on the value and why diversity is lucrative and why it drives the bottom line, and how important it is, not just to consumer, but community. And being a Trojan horse wherever I can, because at the end of the day, inclusivity is not about awareness and optics, it's monetization. It's being able to have economic inclusivity, and how that translates into Web3 and everything with NFTs and social justice and social impact, which I know is why a lot of us are here, really is rooted in utility and how is the execution going to work. So I'm super excited to hear from this incredible group.
What's up? Awesome. Wow. I have so many questions. Well, let me start with you, X. I really appreciate what you said. What are the components for a successful Upstart project? Like, what would you say? So just to give you a sense, Life Taking Justice has 200,000 members, Reform has 200,000 members, about 500,000 just our membership are going to have access to this, not to mention all the folks here that's going to be sharing it. Like, so you're talking to a lot of people, right? And people that don't know what this is, but like have ideas and have visions, but may not have the connection and all that. So speak to them about what are the components early on you need, right, to get a successful project.
All right, so first and foremost, this is not unique to just the blockchain space. This is unique to any company you're trying to start. You start out because there's something that you see you want to change, which is identifying a problem. You see that there's something that needs to be different. What I see a lot of people doing across all startups, especially tech startups, is they think they know how to solve that problem. And at some point along the way, they lose that conversation with the people who are facing that problem, because maybe they go raise a little bit of money, or maybe they just get in their little idea bubble with their friends or whoever's on their team, and then they start going to events like this, and then it becomes kind of like a circle jerk, right? And then they start building something that actually doesn't solve the problem in the way that people who are facing it need. So the number one thing you need to have in any successful project is to remember that those who are closest to the problem are closest to the solution. So everything that you do, whether you're a nonprofit that's trying to solve a hunger issue in a food desert, or if you're a nonprofit that's trying to make sure folks who are coming out of incarceration are able to transition smoothly into the workforce, you really have to make sure that you know where they're at and what they need, and that you're not imposing what you think they need on them. And that's how most startups fail, because they sit down and say, oh, I'm gonna do it this way because I think this will solve it, and all of these people that I have around me are telling me that's the case, and then you go launch and then nobody uses it. Or you have a little bit of traction but nobody keeps using it, what we call stickiness in product management, right? Your product doesn't stick because you weren't in continuous conversation with the people who were facing that problem. Now in the blockchain space, a lot of people look at like NFTs as just art, right? But when you look at blockchain as a technology, what blockchain actually solves is the issue of trust in business, right? So if I go to a restaurant and I order food and it makes me sick, I'm not going back to that restaurant because they've lost my trust. Now, when we do transactions between people, like trusted transactions, say, I'm gonna buy your hat off you for $10, right? Well, how do we verify that transaction? Because it's a room full of people, right? There's someone else. Maybe we sign a contract, but that contract's gonna be drafted by a lawyer. And if I take your hat and I'll give you the $10, you might sue me. So if the transaction is big enough, you might take me to like a court of law, right? All of those solutions for how we verify trust between transactions require putting somebody else in the middle. We could have like a security camera, but I could like tamper with the footage and delete it, right? Now blockchain makes it so that you don't have to do that. You don't have to have anybody in the middle. Because what the technology does when they say it's decentralized, right? It's basically like an Excel spreadsheet on crack. Except anybody who goes in and reads and writes from this Excel spreadsheet gets a copy of it. And all those copies are synced in real time. Now, this is a huge oversimplification, but bear with me here. All those copies are synced in real time, right? And so if I go in and I'm trying to like edit my stuff and make it all malicious, it's gonna double check my copy against your copy and your copy and your copy and your copy in real time. And it's gonna be like, skirt. No, you didn't say you was gonna buy it for $5, you said you was gonna buy it for $10, and it'll automatically overwrite it built into the technology. And that might not sound secure. We all have copies of everybody's ledger. How is that secure? Well, that's where the crypto part comes in. It uses cryptography to make sure that I can only see my stuff inside that copy of the ledger or that Excel spreadsheet. So when you add on top of that these NFTs, these tokens that can verify ownership of an asset, whether that be a piece of art, whether that be a spoken word film like David Bianchi has in here, whether that be a piece of real estate as we're starting to see manifest, whether that be UBI as we're starting to see roll out, you don't need nobody in the middle to verify that what happened happened, right? So it gives you this record where you can guarantee that the donations that people donated are actually real, or that I actually own my Bored Ape or my Doodle, right? So when you're thinking about solving these kinds of problems in communities, anywhere where there is a problem because there's a lack of trust between multiple parties, data gets lost, somebody loses a piece of paper, something like that, that's where blockchain becomes powerful. So thinking social services, and I'll wrap it up real quick. Like, if you are on SNAP benefits and you want to move counties, it's a pain in the ass. Right. Because you have to reapply in the new county or the new place you're going, right? And then you gotta wait until they approve you. Well, what if they were all on a blockchain? So if I say, hey, I want to transfer this from the city of Oakland to the city of San Francisco, which are 10 minutes away, but are different counties, now I can actually move to a different place much faster because I don't have to reapply for those services. So anywhere that you see a problem where it's a disconnect between multiple parties being on the same page at the same time, this kind of technology can help you. And NFTs are one tool on top of that.
Can I hop in there? I got something to add on that. something you said hit me quite clearly, and basically you're saying that if you get away from the problem because you're trying to talk with your buddies too much, or you're not focused on what you're actually trying to solve, you're not going to actually do anything successful, right? And I think that happens oftentimes when you start raising money from external parties, because you have people who have a vested interest and an incentive to have you either make as much money as possible so they can make as much money as possible. So it might not be aligned of what their initial goal was. I think that's where Web3 and decentralized finance comes in perfectly in hand, because you can crowdfund ideas from a greater audience. Like we're speaking to 200,000 people. You better believe if I pitch something that's unique and useful to this amount of people, you're not having to talk to A16Z or Sequoia. You can talk to these guys directly who are automatically engaged in the problems that you're trying to solve and can help be the initial community that seeds and fundraises for the project. So I think that's another really important part about why Web3 is kind of decentralizing how capital is raised and done in a proper way. If done in a proper way, can really lead to some really cool innovations where you have that community engagement from day one.
One last point. It's really easy to build something that works well for you. You have to be intentional about building something that works well for someone who basically does.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Lisa, I want to bring you in here. Question. What are the components for a successful project early on? What do people need?
I mean, I think it depends on the project, right? But any NFT drop, anything you're building in Web3 is starting with community. And I think that's true in real life too, I would like to hope. But when you think about product and you think about release or launch, and in this world, right, minting and whitelisting, what it looks like to be early on or an early adopter, you're becoming a part of something because you feel a sense of belonging, right? You guys came into this room because something on the panel, on the platform, on the flyers, someone you knew, made you feel connected. You didn't just stumble in here. And you came because you felt a sense of belonging, you didn't feel othered, you felt access to entry. You also felt affinity, you felt something that connected you to the other people in this room outside of the product. In Web 2, or even in CPG, or when you think about any product you buy, any hat, we'll just keep going back to that.
It's awesome hat.
It's a great hat. I'm getting 12.
It's a one of one.
But that ability to actually connect with the community of consumers, and it not just be a one-to-one in the sense of the brand, the company, and you need to like it. So background, retiring, recovering, corporate stuff. And so working at Diageo for 5 years, helping lead culture and partnerships, and working with 11 launches across the board on Ciroc, on Don Julio, launching the 1942 DJ network, and really working at the intersection cusp of culture with entertainment and experience. A lot of it was aspirational, inspirational as well, right? But aspirational in the sense of, I want to do it like Diddy, right? The art of celebration. Or when you think of 1942, it wasn't always the tequila connoisseurs. It's a great product, but it wasn't the tequila connoisseurs, it was the lifestyle. It wasn't necessarily, you like 1942, I like 1942. We have something in common. It was, we were both attached to an aspirational thing outside of us. What is so powerful about Web3 and why it is so important to be community first. When I say community first, I mean the Discord, the community conversations, actually being a part and not trying to build it and ask them to come. It's not just authenticity and veracity, which is the entire root of blockchain and ledger format, right? Everything is based in visibility and transparency on a technical level. So in the more physical level, when you think about marketing and launch and all of the traditional elements of a successful product, you have to think about who, not just what. And when we think about roadmaps, there's a reason there's not 3 to 5 year roadmaps. It's iterative and incremental. We have this semi-permanency of the art aspect. There's a handful of other utility and many more coming that have to do with access, that have to do with experience, that have to do with redeemables and incentives and the way that we even get what we want. Utility is also around services and deliverables and what we're getting is the offering, right? So the success has to be in quality of the project, it has to be in the community around it, and it has to be in a real plan that's nimble and able to kind of flex and ebb and flow with the community itself.
Awesome, appreciate that. Thank you. John, you mentioned in your introduction that you launched the project too early, right? And you know, it didn't work out, but you learned from kind of early mistakes. Can you bring us into that a little bit more? Like, you know, what were the lessons learned from that, and if you're comfortable, what happened?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, there's a lot of correlations between what went on in 2017 in the ICO space and what's happening right now in the PFP space. There's a lot of similarities for anyone who remembers the ICO craziness of white paper ICOs and just, I'm gonna come up with a roadmap on a napkin, I'm gonna go to Korea and raise $5 million, I'm gonna go to Hong Kong, get another $3 million, and then I'm gonna disappear. And that happened all the time. It was an amazing time economically and culturally for everybody in the crypto space. We were way too early. Trying to think that Red Cross was gonna allow us to track where their donations were going, I was a very foolish man, right? But, you know, I really believed in this concept of tracking a donation from point of donation to point of distribution, right? Whereas my mom, and I used to always use her as an analogy when we would talk on stage, my mom's 72, lives in Louisville, Kentucky. She should know where her $100 goes. I mean, everybody should. But my mom shouldn't have to get an education in crypto or blockchain to know where her money went to a nonprofit. They should just have the technology that's available to do that. And that's a reoccurring theme. We all know that the technology is available today to make a lot of different things happen. When that project didn't succeed, didn't get commercial adoption, obviously a lot of my friends were like, oh man, sorry. And I was like, no, we're gonna keep going, right? We're just gonna pivot. You know, I used to live in a car, and then I had a lot of money, and then I didn't have a lot of money, and then I raised 3 kids on my own. My life has been about overcoming adversity. I didn't go to college, I don't have a big education, but I have a lot of will, right? So when my project failed, it wasn't a failure. It's just, I have very little empathy for failure, to be quite frank. I feel like failure is just part of success. You're gonna go and you're gonna fail. You're gonna go, and I tell everybody that comes in here and pitches a project, you know, we've sold over $30 million in NFTs in last year. And we're on our 10th mint. We do a lot of projects, and I get pitch projects every day of the week by all kinds of people. And I say to everybody, you know, you have to just believe in yourself and go do it. Like, go do it. Just do it. Like, seriously, like, the worst thing that's gonna happen is you might not hit your economic value that you falsely created, right, in your own damn head, that I'm worth this much money. But if you actually have authenticity and you layer in the concept of doing something for the community, it will be successful. It's just how you measure that success might be different than you started, so you didn't really fail.
Oh, awesome, appreciate that. No is the prerequisite to yes, right?
New opportunity.
New opportunities. Scott, right, you mentioned kind of being the only kind of black guy and raising money for your projects. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about
how much time you
the part that I want to, we can talk about the first part all day, but the part I really wanted you to hone on is the challenges of raising resources for this. And so can you walk people through kind of your, 101 playbook on how to approach fundraising for projects?
Yeah, so I think a lot of what Connor and myself experienced with LiquidStar would apply to some of the nonprofit space. So the first, I think, challenge is, like, there's a huge delta between what people say and what they actually do. So a lot of times people are like, yeah, really? Exactly. So I think the first time that Connor and myself publicly pitched LiquidStar, we were being very modest. And we went to Davos World Economic Forum, and people gassed us up. Like, I'm saying, like, you guys would be raising at a $60 million valuation and $20 million in cash. And we're like, all right, yeah. So we changed all of our stuff based on this. We never stopped to ask, like, all right, where's the check from you? If you think that, like, that's kind of like what it's worth. So it's definitely a challenge of, like, separating the talkers from the doers. The second thing is more general to the social impact space as well. So people who are investing in social impact, you can eliminate the social impact part. They're investing. And so they either want one of two things. They want the additional clout. So they want to say, like, hey, I'm invested in a company doing UBI in Africa. How dope is that? At their dinner party, or they actually just want to make money. So I think understanding that is super important. And then I think the third part, which is more specific to being minority, is that I'm not, again, there's no excuses, like, all of this stuff is very difficult, and I would say that being a minority probably makes things like 3 to 5% harder, which doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're doing something that's like exponentially difficult in scale, it's actually like extremely challenging. So really I think the common thread between what all of us have said about like starting a business is really just having that like confidence and the belief in your convictions to just go into these rooms and just sometimes recognize that like people are gonna look at you and make an assumption, like especially when I was in Asia, people would say some wild stuff. Some wild stuff. It's so good. So yeah, so just really understanding this idea, I think that, again, all of us have touched on, of you just gotta put yourself out there, keep banging your head against the wall over and over again, and the right person will come in and really help you out. And Liquid Star is a great example of that, because when we were talking about this 4 years ago, Connor and myself would go into these rooms and people would be like, what do these guys know? And they would just make assumptions. Well, we also both look kind of young, so they thought we were like 22, but you know, people would think that like we're super inexperienced and things like that. We just have to keep pitching it, and to be quite honest, no one really believed in anything we were saying until we just got lucky and Elon Musk, Kathy Wood, and Jack Dorsey did a podcast that was basically explaining our business model. I literally sent the article of that podcast to our first investor, and then he was like, how much money do you guys want? And we've been speaking to him for a year, right? So sometimes you just have to really stick with it, which is really what everyone is saying, and just really put up with how the world actually is.
Are you still raising money?
We are.
There we go. Don't be afraid to ask is another lesson.
So I'm glad you gave me the mic. Yeah.
I mean, we're investing.
So John, I have the same question to you as someone that actually invests in companies. What are you looking for when someone pitches you? Folks might pitch you in this room tonight. Like, what are you listening for? What do you want to hear?
Great question. I mean, from our side, you know, I'm going to speak actually personally, not even from the company. So I'm totally agnostic into what we're looking at. We've invested in NFT projects, we've invested in software projects, we've invested in DeFi projects, we've invested in a basketball league, we've invested in Baron Davis's enterprise. Like, we're doing all different types of stuff that is generally interesting to me. And legitimately. And it might not be tangent, it might not be directly related to my business, it might not even make me money, but I am generally interested in this stuff. And I think that, you know, who knows if, you know, the relationship with Baron is going to, you know, be, you know, something that changes my life down the line, or maybe it's the NFT project that I invested in that's going to, you know, be the next whatever. So just having that open mindset at first for me has been good, and just the ability to then kind of say, okay, not only is it a good idea, but who are the people behind the project, and, you know, what are their aspirations, and, you know, what have they done in the past? Whether it is a failure, like we also had a failed project, right? And we learned more from that project than we probably learned on the job doing what we're doing now, right? So, you know, people who failed and overcome came that. I think that's even more telling of someone who's going to be successful down the line in whatever they're going to do, because it's really about like what you got inside, and, you know, the willingness to be okay with failing and be okay with continuing to try again and again and again. So really that team and kind of that spirit, and to be honest, I just invest off my gut instinct, and I just know if I like something or I don't. And if you feel it in someone, you just kind of feel that, and that's when you allocate capital. And realistically, you know, I've invested in a lot of stuff, and a lot of it's probably not going to make me money. And that's totally okay. Most of it won't, and that's totally okay. But it's opening up experiences like this. It's opening up all kinds of doors that I don't even know are going to be open in the future. And for me, that is valuable. And, you know, if it's even more important, if it, you know, has some sort of benefit to the, you know, broader community, to, you know, Liquid Star, or to, you know, Africa, or to, you know, just down the street, you know, of here, right? Like, that is moving to me, and it empowers me, and it makes me feel good about what I'm trying to do. That's what I would say.
Awesome. So I have one last question for you all. I'd love for you to each take the question. I appreciate what we've talked about till now, because I think all of you have given folks just the foundation, both in terms of understanding kind of NFTs and blockchain, as well as how to get their project off the ground and funded. Now I want you to look ahead. Like, looking in the future, I've heard from a number of people, this is probably one of the most diverse rooms, right, in the space. It's just the beginning, right, for us in this work, and so we'll see the diversity increase. But want to start with you, Luis, and then we want to work out with this one. And X actually want you to be last, if that's okay. But looking ahead, what is your hope and vision for Web3 as it relates to the folks in this room who are diverse, both in terms of racial diversity, economic diversity, or are creative geniuses? So what would you say to them in terms of your hope and aspiration for Web3 in the future?
I love that as a closing question, and that we're ending with a masterclass because when I'm moonlighting, it says President of Access Fan Club. But I think that there's a lot of hope for the future, right? My hope for our future is that it's not so far in the future. Because I love that we are in one of the most diverse rooms that I've had the pleasure of being in since this conference started. But I hope that that's not the case next year. I hope that we don't even have to comment on diversity or gender equity or BIPOC creators or economic inclusivity or any of the buzzwords around DEI and what these roles mean, because it should just be line items in the budget. It should just be access to entry. And I think what it's going to take is curiosity. I think it's going to take humility. I think it's going to take grit. We've spoken a lot about conviction. And that stick-to-itiveness and that conviction and ability to stay the course. You just heard it from an investor. It's what makes it more valuable. I can trust you because I believe you have the power, the potential, right? But are you going to invest more likely? When I say invest, I mean any form of exchange of currency. If I buy an NFT, I'm investing, right? I'm investing. If I give you 10 minutes of my time, I'm investing. You have to decide what's an investment and an expense in this space. Because all of these resources are abundant, but very intentional, very deliberate. So when we talk about what can we do to get to that future faster, it's going to be around asking questions, being brave enough to say, I don't know. There's nothing more inclusive that anyone on the stage can say than, I don't know. Because no one's willing to ask questions. Everyone wants to think we know what DAO and NFT and all the buzzwords mean. Someone in the room doesn't. Someone in the room who's trying to understand something, whether it's financial literacy, whether it's jargon and vernacular, whether it's breaking down really complex structural items into their component parts, as we already have seen up here. So I think it's asking questions, and when the door is open for you, keeping it open. Not being rushing to the next thing, but making sure that we're lifting each other up together and being that Trojan horse. If you get let in a room, bring friends. If you get access to a budget, make sure that there's a thoughtfulness around how it's being allocated, right? So specific to Web3, when we're talking about product and community and marketplace and culture, build the culture that you want your kids to see. Build the culture that you want to hang out in, because we're all chasing what's already there. Guess what's already there? Mostly old white guys, like everywhere else in culture. So if that's what you want to chase, culturally and financially, that's fine, but in NFTs, less than 13% are women. In gaming, which is what I came out of into Web3, 48% are women, and guess what? They still have sexism, racism, misogyny, all of these things, because no one is in the space at the power place to really push it forward. So I'll wrap that with everyone in this room. I want to see in seats of power, financially, creatively, and being able to democratize not just for gender or democratize for race or for even geography, but we're in a really capitalistic society, right? And we're not just decentralizing finance, but institutions. And you're seeing it with all these bureaucratic institutions. You're seeing it with music, with the labels, and you're seeing it with artistry. If you're able to get the money back in the creator's hands, or at least the route to it, it completely changes the game. It's either going to hold their feet to the fire to evolve or die, or it's going to completely restructure how we make money in the future and no longer be reliant on not just the haves, but the suits. I say in a blizzard, right? But that's really what I want to see, and I want to see it faster.
Awesome. Jeff.
Yeah, I would say there's a lot of people that come to these type of events that are all, wanting to learn how to launch a project or be involved in a project or gain some insight into a project. And I think what Web3 does better than any other time, and I'm, an older guy in this space, and so I've seen a lot, is it allows you to layer impact as a foundational element of what you're doing, right? So go into any project that you're doing and make that part of your part of your ethos, day one. that it's not going to be reactive impact. You know, something bad happens in the world, we're all like, oh fuck, we got to fix it. There's something bad happens all the time. We should be trying to fix stuff all the time. We should try to make impactful change. Every one of these projects that we put together has the ability to layer in impactful change economically, from a utility standpoint at day one. So I think the more people that look at that as a kind of a pentiment of Web3, the better off we are. And then, you know, as every entrepreneur in here probably thinks, or every artist or every creator, I definitely say Web3 is one of the few places that I've ever seen where somebody in this room 6 months from now can be a pioneer and can literally change everything. You don't ever get a time in history where technology and culture kind of intercede at the same time with art and allow you to really change things. Nobody knew what a Bored Ape Yacht Club or a crypto punk or a cool cat or a doodle was 24 months ago, right? Or you get generational wealth created now, right? Generational impact, right? That, anybody in this audience could do that, you know, that's the facts. I mean, I promise you we'll come back in here a year and someone who have been here will have done something unbelievable just because they took that step out the door.
Yes, Scott.
Yeah, just keep it quick. I mean, I think in the next year is the takeover, right? So
That's right.
keeping it fast, like myself, Rob, and Jay, and John. I met Rob and Jay at ETH Denver, so that was like 3 weeks ago, and we were able to pull this off in, I would say, also got to shout out David. Yeah, so we were able to pull this off in literally 21 days, and look around, like we have 3D scanning activation, a 13-foot wall. This is just the beginning. It's only 14 days. Imagine what we can do in 365. So just pay attention to some of the stuff that is going to be coming, and yeah, the takeover in the next year.
John.
So I'll say one thing for myself personally, for our company side. Again, we're kind of trying to act as the financial backbone to a lot of what Web3 is trying to create, but we're trying to do it in a transparent, fair, and equitable way for everyone, so that we can essentially become the new age investment bank. We're trying to coin the term, we want to be the Goldman Sachs of the metaverse. And we mean that, but we want to be able to speak your language, we want to be able to come to your communities, we don't want to be in the ivory towers wearing the suits. We want to be like you, and we want to be able to support all your aspirations within the Web3 space. And then just for a broader hope for kind of Web3 in general, I do hope that it doesn't become just another kind of situation where you have just the elite, maybe the smartest guys in the room, or the guys with the most money who take over DeFi and who are the ones who essentially, you know, make the income inequality gap wider rather than shrink it. So we need to really focus on not, well, I guess empowering everyone like you're trying to do, both reform and with ASJ to learn about Web3 and through that Learn to Earn program that you guys are trying to build. That's the way that you can make sure no one gets left behind. That's something that we really need.
Let's bring us home. Last words.
All right, so something my grandma used to say to me when I was a kid. She said, baby, you can see a problem, it's because you have a piece of the solution. And as I got older, she was like, girl, I said you had a piece, not the whole thing. Now, my grandmother was a black woman who was born in 1930 in Albany, Georgia. For those of you who don't know, Albany, Georgia is the birthplace of the KKK. She went to an all-black HBCU, Albany State, got a BA in early childhood education, became a teacher. She taught through desegregation. She bought a house in the Bay Area in a community that allowed black people to buy houses. She got ran out of 3 before she found that house. And she just retired a teacher. She played bingo every week, once a week, until she passed away. Because of the type of work that my grandmother did with those kids, teaching them how to respect each other in a world that told them that they shouldn't. Because she believed in that vision even when most of her life it wasn't real. I don't have to worry about what bathroom I use. We can sit in this room today. Because my grandmother stood up with the Black Panther Party and marched with them and supported them through the work that they did, I didn't have to worry about where I was getting breakfast from when I went to school. My grandmother saw the problems that she needed to work on solving. So to answer your question, what would I tell all these people in this space who are creative geniuses, which all of you are in your own ways, about the future of Web3 or what do I hope for? I hope that you feel empowered to look at all these problems that we complain about on Twitter, that we retweet about, that we make TikToks about, that we post about, that we spend our time socializing over, and you don't look at them and feel doom. You don't look at them and see like, you know, when you look at a plant, right? Plant has a brown leaf, you can look at it like, damn, my plant is dying. Or you can look at it like, oh, my plant needs water, right? And the difference between that is your mindset. Are you looking at this as somebody who is looking for like, I want, you know, doom mindset, or are you looking at it as a healer? So I hope that every person in this room feels empowered from these conversations, from the education I know y'all finna do, because I know y'all finna be Googling all of us and TikToking and atting all of us, right? But I hope that you feel empowered so that the problems that you see, you become a piece of the solution to all of those. This technology is one piece, AI is another, quantum is another. But don't look at these problems and feel so overwhelmed that you just conk out and be in your room doom scrolling to Billie Eilish. Be empowered to connect with other people in this real universe and use the metaverse to solve those problems. And I hope to be of service to all of you however I can.
Give it up for this time. Come on, y'all. Thank you. If you want to keep up with what we're working on, I'm asking you to do two things. One, there are QR codes around, right? The QR codes will connect you to Alliance for Safety and Justice, for Jay's CEO. They'll keep you updated on everything they're working on in Web3. So please go and sign up. Use the QR code to sign up. For Reform Alliance, right? I want everyone to pull out your phone, right? Pull out your phone, please. I want you to text Reform to 81411. 81411.
One more time for the people in the back.
Reform. Text the word reform to 81411. Okay? And we'll keep you updated, y'all. Thank you so much. We give it up to Jay Jordan. Everybody, come on, give it up to Jay Jordan.